Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us for today's episode of Canal Days. As always, I'm your host Carrie, along with my co-host, founder of Historical Tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Como. Our Canal Days series delves into the vast collection of historical sites throughout Massachusetts, with Robert's expertise of the local history as our personal guide. Each episode, we uncover history throughout local communities, highlighting historic landmarks and remaining relics, all while uncovering their seminal significance. Today's episode of Canal Days will be learning about the Indian Orchard Mill, located in Springfield, Massachusetts. Now, can you reveal the early history of the Indian Orchard Mill?
Well, it was built, of course, along the Indian Orchard Canal, which was completed in the year 1848. They had dug it in the straight line, a lot of masonry work on the side, and already. But then the Ward Manufacturing Company comes in, a cotton mill, and they take from 1848 to 1854 to get their mill ready for use. And that's a very long time to build a mill. Usually you can build a mill in several months to up to a year, but very strangely it took them 6 years to get everything ready. So the first drop of water out here for power was not used until 1854. And so they're one of the last mills for industrial uses and an industrial power canal in Massachusetts. Most of those canals came around 1822 up to 1848. Sure, there's some later ones, but this seems to be, at this point, a very slow motion development. Now, they built it in such a way that it was going to be a cotton mill.
Detail the purpose of the mill.
All right, the mill was to make cotton, especially cotton yarn and cotton fabric in a raw sense that could be sold off to other users. The yarn could be sold off to other mills, or it could be sold off to individuals or wholesalers, retailers. And so they didn't make the finished product, and that's why the mill is somewhat on the small side compared to other cotton mills around the area, like in Holyoke, Chicopee, so forth. Cotton mills were much bigger because they made finished products, and half their workers were seamstresses. And here you didn't have that, so they were selling off a certain product to be developed by others into the finished one. Now, there were other mills that come into place later, and let me tell you about those there. Okay, so the water manufacturing mill was there 1854 to 1859. Then the Indian Orchard Mills Company came in 1859 to 1890. Again, they made cotton. And they also made a large mill number 2 as big as mill number 1, which didn't last particularly long because by 1910 it's already gone. Right, so they say they made it in the 1860s, but 1910 it was off the maps as far as I can tell. But they did make a bigger mill number 2, 3, and 4. Mill number 1 is the biggest, but they did make that mill bigger by adding a mill 2, 3, and 4. All right, now they sold out to another company who kept pretty much the same name, the Indian Orchard Company. Was around from 1890 to 1938. Now, along the way, they had a tenant, and we'll talk about that in question number 3. Along the way, also, they developed a canal, and a building was added to make the United Electric Light Company on the land that the Indian Orchard Mill was on. And that was in 1887. But they didn't change over directly into electricity right away because they had the advantage of having hydromechanical everything on site. Now, why not keep using that as long as you could? And so electrical energy was not used in this mill until the year 1905, and even then it was a supplement, and it wasn't until probably the 19-teens, 1920s that it was started to use for the energy has a majority of the energy instead of minority. And so a lot happened around this area, including a development from this mill of the entire village into a wonderful place to work. Besides homes, which were there right from the beginning, when the Ward manufacturers around, they had parks such as the Cottage Hill Grove Park, they had Myrtle Street Park and School, and they had churches developed, three for Catholics. The one for congregation was already there for a long time. And of course, other schools, more homes for the middle class, so forth and so forth. And it went upwards to a better village.
And stick around and we'll be right back after this quick announcement. Are you fascinated by local history and eager to investigate the obscure treasures off the beaten path throughout the state of Massachusetts? Or maybe just seeking an unforgettable cultural activity for family and friends to enjoy? Look no further than Historical Tours of Greater Holyoke, founded by Robert Como. With over a decade of experience, Robert offers captivating tours and presentations of historic sites and landmarks throughout the state. And that's not it. You can also schedule private tours tailored to your interests, ensuring a personalized adventure and unforgettable memories. Perfect for friends and families or groups of all sizes, making for an exciting hands-on learning experience that brings history to life. Simply visit holyokecanaltour.org or email bobcat4214 capital B at yahoo.com to book your private tour today. Getting back to our video podcast, what about the Lilly Company Mill? Can you clarify the significance and where its location is in regards to the Indian Orchard Mill?
Yes, they were a tenant of the Indian Orchard Mill Company. They started their existence in 1890 when there was a changeover for new owners, but they kept the same names. In 1890, from the Indian Orchard Mill Company into the Indian Orchard Company. They didn't need as much space as the other company. So in 1890, a new tenant came in and paid rent, and they were on not the power side of the canal, but the other side. They're called the Lilly Company Mill. They made cotton, and they also made wool. They're spelled Lillie. And they stayed there for quite a few years, 1890s into the 1920s. And they were not on the power side. So I don't know how from 1890 to about 1905 they got their power, unless they made a cut from the power canal into their mill, which is possible. That was done sometimes. But when I find out, I'll put on the website for all these mills of Indian Orchard, and you'll get to see. That's very likely. That was done a few times in Holyoke also, and done other places. So I'm assuming it was done here too. But they're pretty much the same, a lot smaller though.
And define what has become of the mills currently.
Okay, these mills that were inside where the power canal was being used, which was the Indian Orchard Mills, these were made to be 5 floors high. In the final rendition, there was a mill 1 up to 4. 1 and 2 were of medium size, and they butted each other. So 1 and 2 were actually fairly big by the end. And they made, of course, cotton and yarn, and they had the mills doing their work from the top downwards, the power room in the basement, but they'd bring the raw material up to the top, and along the way they'd warp and weave the yarn together, and they put a finished product in a cutting machine and a dye machine in the back. Now, what are you going to do with all these rooms after the mill leaves? Well, income developers, and there's now in place in these Indian Orchard mills a person that decided to change it over into an artist colony. And I believe they've been in that state for a very, very long time. And what that means is that artists have their studios here, and what they do, different kinds of art is done in these studios, different artist space. They work, sure, the typical painting, but they also do sculpture, photography. They have their galleries in here. They can bring people in here and show off what they're doing. There's a beautiful website for this site called theindianorchardmills.com, and you should visit it. And so thus, I believe it's for about at least 30 years, maybe 40, it's now an artist colony. The canal still flows through because energy is still made at the very end, converted into electrical energy. The dam thus is still there, canal, and the mills are in still great shape. The former tenant of Lilly, there's something that's going on inside there. I don't know what it is. It might be a machinist. But overall, everything's fine. In the village of Indian Orchard is still great. Wonderful school, library, a couple wonderful parks. Um, some of the churches need some work because they're getting very old. But overall, it's still a nice, quaint little village that's good to wander around and learn about. So thank you very much.
And thank you for tuning into Canal Days and joining us on our journey through the rich history of the Connecticut River Valley. We hope you enjoyed uncovering some of the hidden and overlooked marvels and their fascinating stories that shaped our past in the state of Massachusetts. Special thanks to Robert Camus, founder of Historical Tours of Greater Holyoke, for sharing his passion and expertise with us. Remember, you can find more information about Robert's tours, book private tours, and explore the Canal Days video and podcast series at holyokecanaltour.org. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please like, comment, and share. We'd love to hear your thoughts and suggestions for future episodes. Don't forget to keep exploring and discovering history that's hidden in plain sight all around us. And thanks for listening. And don't forget to tune into our next episode of Holyoke Canal Days. And log on to holyokecanaltour.org. Until next time.